Hello there, my very good friends. Andy Murray here for What Culture Wrestling, and today we're going to be talking about Jon Moxley, the AEW World Champion himself, who is currently flying high in professional wrestling after long leaving his Titty Master days behind him in WWE and finding a new lease of life in both New Japan Pro Wrestling and, of course, AEW. From deathmatch nutjob to sports entertainment rodeo clown to genuinely one of the best wrestlers in the world, this is a guy who has played many different roles across his 16-year career, and today we are going to separate the Jonathan Good from the Jonathan Bad. So let's break it down. I'm Andy for What Culture Wrestling, and these are the many faces of Jon Moxley ranked from worst to best. Number 10, germophobe Dean Ambrose. I'm of course talking about the last heel character that Mr. Moxley played in WWE, and man, how could I have anything else in dead last? I mean, this was a guy who cut just really lame each and every one of you people promos on the crowd. He had injections in his asshole so that he wouldn't catch their disease. He wore a gas mask, and of course, worst of all, he said that Roman Reigns' leukemia returning was a product of karma. That particular line, we know, was one of the final straws to break the camel's back in terms of him leaving WWE. The whole run was a shambles. It was entirely destructive to both himself, WWE, and everyone else he worked with. So that's why it's at the bottom. Number 9, prop comic Dean Ambrose. I'm of course talking about comedy, wacky jokester Dean Ambrose here, the guy who went from lunatic fringe to a dude who hangs out with a potted plant named Mitch, assaults people with hot dog carts and their contents, and loses via exploding televisions. WWE's brand of low comedy is very rarely funny, and this was no different, and at times it seemed like the only guy who was popping for it was the guy who was writing it. On top of that, it did a mighty good job of undermining any credibility that Moxley had built up in his post-Shield run. It sucked. Number 8, The Shield 2.0. Obviously, the second Shield run was never going to quite match up to the first. That, in my eyes, is one of the greatest stable runs in WWE history. So, how do you compare to that with a kind of hot-shotted program just a couple of months before a guy's going to leave with not much time to really do anything? The simple answer is you can't. You can't catch lightning in a bottle twice, so while this was a fun, nostalgic run, it was just a nostalgia run. We did admittedly get that awesome 6-man tag at Fastlane 2019 out of it, and it was a really nice way to send Dean Ambrose off into the sunset, working with his brothers one last time, but, you know, it was too brief and too just light for it to be higher. Number 7, Deathmatch John. If you want to know just how nuts Jon Moxley / Dean Ambrose was before he hit WWE, go into your YouTube machine after you're done with this video and type in Jon Moxley CZW. It is a brutal, violent, bloody treasure trove of death matches, of blood and guts, of light tubes, glass panes, barbed wire, everything you can think of. And this was an essential step for Moxley, not just in honing his ultra-violent, brawling style, but also his character and his promo work from that era, which is particularly underrated. And, you know, to top it all off, the guy almost severed a nipple while working a match for Dragon Gate USA. So, who else but Jon Moxley could find themselves in a scrape like that? Number 6, WWE Champion. I think it's fair to say that the moment that made Dean Ambrose WWE Champion was better than the run itself, and that's really unfortunate, because this is something that a lot of people had been waiting a long time for, and when it finally came, Money in the Bank 2016, it was a great pop. It was huge, it was internet breaking almost, great stuff. But the reign that followed wasn't quite up to par. In-ring standards were relatively high, working with the likes of Dolph Ziggler and AJ Styles, but Ambrose was never really booked in a way that made him feel like a true top world champion. The perception coming out of that 80+ day reign was that he was a guy who was maybe more compelling as a chaser rather than the champion. Now, we'd later learn several years later that that wasn't the case, but we'll get to that a few entries from now. Number 5. Dean Ambrose in FCW. Dean Ambrose's developmental run was just as vital as any other point in his career. It was here that shades of Roddy Piper and loose cannon Brian Pillman really started coming to the forefront in his work with guys as diverse as Seth Rollins, CM Punk, Mick Foley, and William Regal. Check out those Regal matches if you've never seen them before, by the way. They are tremendous. But the Foley stuff was particularly interesting because this was Dean essentially raging against the hardcore legend for being so reckless and being such a poor influence on upcoming generations of wrestler. It was kind of similar to the anti-hardcore stuff that Mick was doing as Cactus Jack in ECW. Now, it was never truly fleshed out to the extent it could be, but given his background in death matches as Moxley, it was really compelling stuff. The FCW run had to come to an end at some point, and that came with the Shield's genesis. Number 4, the Lunatic Fringe. So let's get this out of the way immediately. There was a lot of lame stuff in this run. I'm not disputing that at all. There was a lot of crossover with the prop comic stuff that I described earlier on, but the aftermath of the Shield's feud of the Shield split, when Dean Ambrose was feuding with Seth Rollins, it was genuinely tremendous stuff. Ambrose was alive as an electric, edgy, and genuinely dangerous babyface. Now, the caveat to all this is that it didn't last all that long, as things tend to do when you run into Bray Wyatt. The run kind of lost its steam there. He was being bewildered by singing children and exploding TVs, and all kinds of silly gubbins kicked in is what I'm saying. But that months-long run opposite Seth Rollins, mwah, beautiful. Number 3, the Shield's original run. I think that the Shield are one of the best stables in wrestling history. There's all kinds of stuff to back this up. The buzz, the impact of their debut, how cool they looked, how they all felt like they had distinct styles and slight differences on their characters, the way they impacted WWE, the match quality, having trios bangers with the likes of the Wyatt family and Team Hell No and Ryback, even Evolution. The fact that these guys had their successful individual runs was United States Champion Dean Ambrose, we had Reigns and Rollins with the tag titles, and of course, when they broke up, they had the great Rollins-Ambrose feud. It laid the groundwork for future matches and feuds as well, and it created 3 world champions. It was a complete success across the board, so why isn't it number 1? Well, we're ranking the many faces of Jon Moxley here. Jon Moxley was one man of 3 in the Shield. It was a tremendous run, but the individual quality of the 2 runs I've placed above this, I think, speak more to him as a character than to him and his individual success. Number 2, Jon Moxley in New Japan. It was opposite Juice Robinson that Jon Moxley debuted for New Japan, and immediately it was clear that this was a different beast. The sports entertainment stench was washed away straight away as he swaggered his way down to the ring through the bleachers with this awesome, doomy, slivery rock track in the background. He's clad in basic black tights, knee pads, and boots. This is where Jon Moxley became more than a rodeo clown, more than a lunatic. This was the wrestler's wrestler version of Jon Moxley. He proved he could hang not only as a brawler, which we already knew, but demonstrated a surprising degree of technicality and embarked on a tremendous G1 Climax run that yielded my personal match of the year against Tomohiro Ishii. Now, his New Japan future is in the balance at the moment. He's the United States Champion, but he can't defend it in the US because of his AEW contract. He also can't get to Japan because, you know, there's like a plague thing happening at the moment. But even this year, he has had great matches with the likes of Lance Archer and Minoru Suzuki, proving himself a three-dimensional, badass, all-round, complete professional wrestler. And who could forget his lovely relationship with Shota Umino? Lovely stuff. And at number 1, Jon Moxley in AEW. From the very first moment that Jon Moxley showed up at Double or Nothing 2019, dumped Kenny Omega, and took in that deep, cathartic breath of fresh air, his run in AEW has literally been money. The guy has proven himself a legitimate business driver for this promotion. He is one of the most effective guys at popping quarter-hour TV ratings every single week. His YouTube uploads do great value objectively, even if you don't like necessarily what the guy's doing on television, and that's fine, that's all subjective. Objectively, he is a success there. Now, my colleague Michael Sidgwick, who's much smarter than me, has a great take on Jon Moxley in AEW, calling him something akin to a protagonist in a John Carpenter action movie. He's cool, he's a badass, he's extremely charismatic, and at times when he wants to be, he's genuinely funny. And of course, just like Snake Plissken, Jon Moxley escaped from New York. It's a wonderful comparison. And look, again, you might not like the output, you might not have liked certain elements like the way the Brody Lee feud came together, but look at business. Look at how much this guy is enjoying himself. Look at the quality of the promos on a week-to-week basis. Look how he helped enhance a guy like MJF through working with him. Look how he helped fix the mess that was the Dark Order with the awesome Brody Lee match at Double or Nothing. And now he's tangling up with Darby Allin. Lance Archer's gonna fight for the title. It's great stuff across the board. This version of Jon Moxley, in my view, is the best. But as always, I'm interested to know what you guys think, so head on down to the comment section below and fire off your spicy hot takes. If you want to shout at me for the Shield not being number one, you can do that, man. I've got very thick skin. After that, you can like, you can share, you can subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, do whatever the hell you want. And you can follow us on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE and myself at Andy H. Murray, where you can tell me a second time how wrong I am. Goodbye.